Hello guys and a very warm welcome to the stream. I see you all has been here already waiting, more than 100 people waiting before the stream has started. Welcome to every one of you, and this is going to be a very interesting stream. If you guys followed my other social media, particularly my Facebook and Twitter, you'll see that I have talked about this topic for quite a bit now. And the ULA, or as the abbreviation is in Afrikaans, the VVA, is one of the organizations that do a lot of work towards self-determination, and self-determination not just for Afrikaner people but for every people in South Africa. So we'll have a discussion with the leader of the ULA, Hein Marx, today. We'll start with a short introduction and he's going to tell us exactly what they are doing, and then we will get into the critical questions. I will think of questions as we go on and I will ask them, but you guys are also very welcome to ask questions in the chat. I will try and see if I can ask all the good questions in the chat, but if you really want your question to be answered, you're welcome to give a super chat and we will read every super chat. Even if you just want to make a comment that you want everyone to know, we will read that. So, without any further ado, let's welcome our guest. Hello, Hein, how are you?
Hi, Willem. How are you? Fine, perfect.
I'm very good, thank you. So, what we're here for, let's jump right into it. You are the leader of the ULA. Tell us exactly what the ULA's plan is and how you hope to achieve self-determination or secession in South Africa.
Willem, I like the way that you ask exactly how it works, because if I have to tell you exactly, we'll be busy here for, I think, more than a week.
Well, let's summarize.
Let's rather summarize. What are we doing? The ULA is a civil rights organization, also registered as a non-profit company in South Africa as well as in America. There's a reason why we are registered in America, and that's very simply, quite simply, because a civil rights organization registered in America must have, according to American law, the ear of the American government, which we do. What do? We basically organizing the secession, and that is a legal process, the secession movement in South Africa for the minorities. Who are the minorities? The minorities we've defined as basically all the European people. That means Afrikaner, Boere, German, Jew, Italian, Greek, all Europeans, as well as all the colored communities. They are also minorities. Why did we determine that? Quite simply because international law says your group of people, they don't talk about a volk or nazi in international law. They talk about a group of people. And how do you determine, or according to international law, how must you determine your group of people? Your group of people must be determined by having one of the following four same characteristics. It starts off with ethnicity, language, culture, or religion. Now, the moment that you look at all four of them, obviously with the coloreds, your ethnicity falls away because they're not European or we are not colored. But interestingly enough, more than 80% of all Europeans, that includes your, for instance, Jewish people, plus on the other hand, it includes the very small minority of Muslim coloreds, fall within those categories of language, culture, and religion. Interestingly, we are just over 70% of the minorities falls within the Afrikaans language one. So that's how we determined our group of people. Then international was very clear on, if you want to secede, it's a specific way that you've got to follow international law and rules of how to get there. And it was specifically written and designed that you can't just wake up one day and say, listen, I want to secede away from my so-called, in international law, the term mother country, and now you start the process and you can quickly finish it. If it was that easy, I think we and a lot of other people would have done it long ago, especially in South Africa. It was written specifically that it must take a long time. Why? Because the whole concept of secession is to have, to use the American term again, which funny enough is virtually in the news every day nowadays, is a two-state solution, which means you take one state and you make it two states. Original country that becomes two separate sovereign states. And what we're doing is basically following, I'm not going to go into the detail of what must be done, except if you want to ask me, but we followed that process. And to follow that de jure process is very complicated, and there's a lot of pitfalls. But we are at the point now where one of the next steps that we've got to get over is your so-called mandate. Now, it's very easy. I mean, I get a lot of people that phone me, or even other people in the ULA. They say, oh, it's fantastic what you're doing. Please just get sovereignty for us. Get a separate state for us. Well, it's not that easy. In fact, it's impossible. I can't get it. ULA can't get it. Sorry?
No, I said that's exactly our problem, yes.
Yeah, you can't get it. You've got to have the mandate. Now, what does the mandate mean? The mandate means the majority, and the majority in so-called democracy in the world is 50% of the voters plus one must say, yes, I want it. Now, again, in the area that we've determined, because that's another prerequisite, you've got to determine your area. And you've also got to say, what is the legal basis? Why did you determine that area? Now, the area that we've determined is in current terms, the whole of the Western Cape, the whole of the Northern Cape, part of the Eastern Cape, which then gives you the whole Old Cape province. It's also the whole of the Western Free State, and then a small bit into Transvaal, including Pretoria. Why did we determine that? Quite simply,
before you go on, I just want to say that the thumbnail of this video is the area that you guys determined. So if someone wants to look at it, they can see it on the thumbnail of the video. They'll see the map.
Okay. So why did we determine it? A lot of people say, well, why didn't you include Sanin, for instance, into our area? Because I live there. Believe me, if we could have included virtually everything, we would have. But what is the legal basis? Why did we determine that specific area? We used the 2011 ICC statistics to determine in the district voting districts where the minority is the majority.
I see.
So now, basically, what we've got to do is we've got to say we've determined in which area we are the majority, but now you need the mandate to say, well, the people want it. It's not a referendum, like a lot of people have basically attacked us and say, you can't have a referendum on a voting system like that on the internet. Of course you can't have a referendum like that. We're not having a referendum. We're having a we're getting a mandate. Why? Because this is not like a normal we're not a political party, but it's not like a political party voting process where you vote for a party to say, well, we give you our vote to do basically whatever you want to do with it. That is politics. We're not into that. We are asking, do you want sovereignty, yes or no? That is what a mandate is about. That's all it is. So what we've determined in terms of those figures, there's just under 4 million registered voters in the area that I've mentioned to you. So to have the 50% plus one means you need 1.9 odd. So we just made it round and say we need 2 million people to say we want sovereignty. And then, of course, if you have that, you must also realize and accept that it's impossible to reach all people, to get the message out to all people. So if you have 50% plus one vote of people that say they want it, when a referendum happens, chances that you will have much more than 50% is very good. But it's also irrelevant, even if you can only have 50% plus one. So now we are in the de jure process of getting that mandate. The interesting thing is that we've done a lot of work. There's massive amounts of paperwork and a lot of stuff that happened with the government. Also, funny enough, because that's one of the prerequisites, your connections, your dealings, your everything with the international community. That includes the United Nations. And remember, that is specifically in terms of your secession. Not in terms of, I went over to the United Nations because I was invited as a guest and I sat there, I had coffee and cake and I flew back. That means nothing. It's in terms of secession. So we are now at the point where we need the mandate. Once you've got the mandate, and I'll go through it because I know that the question is going to come, so let me rather answer that now. Once we've got the mandate, then you demand, I want to make it very clear, you don't ask the government because we are busy with an international legal process that the government is 100% aware of. You then demand in terms of international law for a referendum. Because we may not, how can we get a referendum? You can't do it. And that referendum will then only be in that area that we've determined. Now, if we ask the government or demand the government for a referendum, again, another question that's going to come up, but they will never give it. We know they're not going to give it. But luckily, international law is written very clear about that. Because if you demand, and you make it very clear, that's the process that you followed. And remember, international law goes much further. That's why I say we can talk a week about this. It says everything that you do and everything that you plan to do in terms of secession, the international community must be informed about everything. So everything that we're doing, everything that we plan, the international community knows about it. We must do it. So then you demand a referendum. The ANC, with their blatant arrogance, will deny us that referendum. And then you get to a point where, with talking to your international partners in this, and if I talk about international partners, we're talking about countries, the governments of other countries. Then you don't have to secede. What that you call is you do a UDI, a unilateral declaration of independence, which is, it sounds funny, but that's legal terms. It's you always, a lot of times you hear, well, this guy got off on a technical point. This is a technical thing. It's still seceding, but it's called a UDI. And it's called a UDI because your so-called mother country denied you, knowing that you have the mandate in that area for sovereignty. They deny that to you, then you can't secede, so you do a unilateral declaration of independence. Then you're still not finished. Then you still need only one thing to happen in terms of international law to be successfully a new country and successfully have seceded. And that is, one other country must publicly acknowledge your sovereignty. Once you've done that, you are then automatically, it's like the flick of a switch, when that happens, you are then a sovereign country. That's what we're doing at this stage.
I'll just get to the questions now. I'm just writing the last point here. which I made some notes while you were talking, so I can ask these questions. Just before we start with this, now we are open for questions. I'm going to ask my own questions that I wrote down here, and you guys are also very welcome to ask questions in the chat. As I mentioned before, if you really want your question answered, then you can do it via super chat, and we'll definitely get to that. Firstly, Hein, you said that you needed a mandate and you wanted roughly 2 million votes. So you've got a website there. I think it's voteforselfdetermination.com. Is that correct?
No.
Sorry, well, what's the website?
No, there are two websites. The one is voteforselfdetermination.co.za.
.co.za, that's what I was talking about. So
Mine website is ULA Congress with two S's.com.
All right, so you already started collecting data on people who would possibly give you this mandate. How many votes do you already have on that website?
At this stage, we've got 200. We'll call it 223,000 votes.
223,000 votes, so about 1.8 million to go. So tell me then, do you have any country that have expressed interest to support a unilateral declaration of independence in South Africa?
Well, they don't support. It's the same thing. That's why it's technical. But theoretically, they support secession. Yes, we've got more than one.
Can you name any of these countries?
No, because that is a very difficult thing to do. Why? Because remember, we are not a country.
Okay.
We are supposed to, and that's part of international law, that you must prove, which we've done. You must prove that to the international community, and it actually says that you are able to go into contracts with other countries. It basically means you can't have a lot of monkeys doing it. And I'm not saying that we are not monkeys. I think there's a lot of people that might think we are monkeys. To their detriment, they can say that. But the reality is we're not a country. So the countries that support us won't like to deal with South Africa, the ANC government, but in the process also support us, because that's just not good international politics to have that known. Yes, I think 99% of the people that might listen tonight will know who those countries are.
I see. So, but you can't name them.
Well, we don't want to divulge, because your question is very direct.
I understand. Just tell me, so you're taking the route of international law, and you say that you guys have studied this international law very deeply, and you know it by hand, and you know that I presume going through the United Nations, you will get the support for a referendum, which the ANC will deny. But there are many other peoples all over the world. There are the Basques and the Catalonians in Spain. There are the people from South Tyrol, the German-speaking Italian population. There are quite a few peoples in Ethiopia, and I can name a lot more peoples who are also actively looking for self-determination or secession from their countries, and they unfortunately have you can say a much better case in international law than we have here in South Africa, because they are an ethnic group, a religious group, and a language group, and they in most of the cases that are different from the country that they are in. But none of these countries have ever had the United Nations or any of these people organize a referendum. I think the most similar case to South Africa, and the state that South Africa is in, is probably Yugoslavia, and the only way that Yugoslavia split up into the countries that we know today was through bloody violence. Why do you think that the ULA's method will be different from any of these peoples over Europe and Africa that also want the exact same thing?
Willem, okay, firstly, you've mentioned the Basques, the Catalonians, South Tyrol, by the way, they don't want self-determination because it's just, there's no sense in it. Do they join back to Germany or do they go to Austria? The point is, you said that they've got a better chance than in South Africa.
I said a better case.
They don't, a better case. They don't.
Why do you say that?
Well, it's quite simply because each and every case is handled under Article 1 of the International law. It's called international law number 1 is what is the name of the thing called now? International Covenant on Human and Political Rights. And everything is around Article 1. And that basically means that each and every group of people that can determine them like that as minorities have the right to self-determination. Please don't make the mistake to think that one group has got a better chance than another group. That's not true. We are all equal under the law. And funny enough, even in South Africa, Article 9 of the South African Constitution, we're all equal, must be treated equal under the law. So in international law, we are also equal. There is not one that's better or a better chance than the other one. That's not true. What is very definite true, and that is there is not two countries in this world, and I think it's 253 or 54 countries so far have already successfully seceded. I don't know if you know who was the first country that seceded away from their mother country. Do you know, Willem?
Probably Israel, or was it Zimbabwe?
No.
Or Rhodesia? Okay, tell me.
1776, America.
Oh, of course. I see what you did there.
That was the first country that successfully seceded away from their mother country, England.
And we all know how they did that.
Well, that was, and that's not the only country that did it by war. Now,
yes.
You mentioned Yugoslavia. Remember, Yugoslavia basically first started a war, and then, but the European Union and America realized that this war is going to be never-ending if we don't stop this and get a so-called two-state solution. This will be a never-ending war.
Well, it was more than two states in Yugoslavia's case.
Well, they still call it a two-state. They were more, you're right. But
I see.
It was done in that case specifically. If you take those 4 points, it was done on specifically the religion one, because it was the Muslims and the Christians. That's basically what happened in Yugoslavia. So in terms of South Africa, it depends on from whose point of view you see it. I think we've actually got a better chance of success in terms of the eyes of the world to succeed. Why? And this is the one thing that I sometimes suffer to get into people's heads. Quite simply because if we, as the Europeans, as the white people of South Africa, go to the international community and say, we want sovereignty, I think chances of success is less than 1%. Why? Because we just can't get away from the era before 1994.
Exactly.
Unlike the clerk that said the other day that apartheid was not crime against humanity, I don't say I agree with it, but the point is it was declared a crime against humanity. So exactly like the Nazis, the whites of South Africa fall in that same category in the eyes of the international community. So what are we saying? We're saying we are not doing this as whites. We are doing this as minority groups, including coloreds. But no, we do not want a new, call it apartheid state, where we will govern the coloreds, or the coloreds govern us for that matter. No, we want a very clear, perfect, confederate system. The closest system in the world currently running that's a confederate system is the Swiss canton system. Each and every confederate state is actually totally sovereign. And they've got, their central government is very, very small. It consists basically out of your army. Why? Because you've got one outside border that must be protected. You've got your Department of Foreign Affairs, because your foreign affairs must be the same. And you've got one currency. Otherwise, each and every sovereign confederate state rules themselves.
I see. My personal opinion on this is that there are many organizations in South Africa that work towards some form of self-determination, or as some more moderate organization might call it, just self-managing. And I would support any organization, whether they take a hardline stance on this like you do, or whether they, like AfriForum for example, take a much softer case on it, call it self-management, but work towards the same end goal, but on a way more moderate way. But as you said, I do not think that the ANC will ever give us a referendum on this. But I am a bit more skeptical or pessimistic about the international community helping us on this, or doing something for us. But I know that you don't want the international community to jump in and do it. I know that you want to do it yourselves and just get the support, which is the exact same thing that I also want. But I think the more that we put pressure on this government, and the more that we actually talk about this and talk about it to the international community, and also to the community in South Africa as well, the better, because then we get this idea into the people's heads in South Africa, and secondly, we already make friends that might support us overseas. And that's why I will support any organization that works towards it. And I like what you say. I might not be as optimistic about the possible outcome of this as you are, but I still support what your organization is doing. Just a very serious point is that if there is a unilateral declaration of independence or some form of secession from one side, don't you think it will lead to a very bloody war in South Africa? And are you prepared to comment on what will happen, and what will the ULA's part be in such a thing?
Okay, let me answer you on that, and I'll quote international law for you. Remember, I told you earlier that if you either secede or alternatively have to declare a unilateral declaration of independence, you do it in cooperation with at least one of your international partners, but most probably with more than one. So what does international law say? International law makes it very clear. And remember one thing, international law wasn't written for South Africa or for the problems that we've got now. It was written they started writing it very, very long ago, and they started basically getting it to a better practical law, which by the way is very flexible at the moment. Why? Because all countries differ after 1945. But what does it say? International law says, once you have successfully seceded, now remember, successfully secede means another country have accepted and acknowledged your secession, which means you are now an independent country. It says two things. It firstly says, I don't know if the listeners know what the Geneva Convention says, but the Geneva Convention is actually very clear in terms of things that you may not do when you've got a war. That is what the Geneva Convention is all about. Bearing that in mind, international law says once you've seceded, and I will quote it, then you may defend yourself in any way possible. What does that mean? It actually means in any way possible.
But do we want that? Do we want to defend ourselves in any way possible?
Well, the point is, if you're getting attacked, what are you going to do? Are you going to defend yourself, or are you going to just be slaughtered? You've got to defend yourself. You haven't got a choice.
In my opinion, we as a group are already targeted in slaughterings, and I actually want to also get to a super chat here, because as I said, that all super chats on here will be read, and that's how you can make sure that you will be acknowledged. But in any case, Andre Grobler says, how is farm murder not a crime against humanity? Which I think is...
It wasn't declared, that's the sad thing, it wasn't declared a crime against humanity.
Well, not yet, one can say, but I think we can certainly have a very strong case that if apartheid it was declared a crime against humanity, and you can take the death toll of the apartheid government as calculated by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was actually led by Desmond Tutu, who was on the ANC side and clearly biased in it. Even his commission calculated the deaths that was caused by the apartheid government at exactly 512.
I totally agree with you.
If you take the amount of farm murders that already happened, which is close to 3,000, then one can make a very strong case and say, well, it's 6 times as bad if you just take death counts. But I don't have a lot of hope for that happening, because, as we know, something like Nazism was also declared a crime against humanity, and they slaughtered many people in war and in concentration camps. But then you have on the other side Joseph Stalin and Chairman Mao in China, who slaughtered 10 times, maybe 100 times more than any other country has ever done of their own citizens, and that was not yet or ever declared a crime against humanity. Communism, that is. So that is politics. That is politics. I totally agree with you. So if this will ever work out, that'll all depend on the zeitgeist and on the political zeitgeist. Yaku Dev says, and there's also.
I just want to finish your question earlier in terms of your question was what happens once you've either done a UDI or seceded. It firstly says international law, you may defend yourself in any way possible, but it goes further and it says the United Nations or any other country must defend you against your mother country.
But will they though? I mean, it's going on all over Africa. These things are going on, and you have a very lackadaisical UN Peace Corps there that don't really do anything.
We don't want the United Nations. Please, we do not want, and we've made it already very clear, we don't want the United Nations to defend ourselves. In fact, we don't even want one of our partners to defend us. We want the means to defend ourselves when it happens. That's what we want.
Are you really prepared to make that statement, though? Because, I mean, even great generals of the Boer republics like General De La Rey at first said he does not want war.
No, sure. But, I mean, this is exactly what I told you earlier. I don't want war. Nobody wants war. But I said it the other day to somebody, when are we going to start believing what Malema, the ANC government, BLF is saying to us? Everything that they've said so far, they've done. They've said they want a war. They're going to get it. Because they want it, they're going to start it. They said they want to change Article 25. They're doing it. They said they will raise taxes. They're doing it. Whatever they've said, they prepare, and they do it. When are people going to start believing them?
Well, I think a lot of people are already believing them, and I think that's also why we see a wake-up in South Africa, and why the poll that I run on Twitter, 5 out of 6 people who answered it said that they would rather have self-determination or secession in South Africa than they would want to fix the country. And this is a purely a hypothetical situation in which I gave the option to actually fix the country fully in South Africa, and most people said, well, they're not interested in that anymore.
Willem, I'll tell you why I'm not interested to fix the country. It's very simple. If you go back to before 1994 and you say you want to fix the country, it means you've still got, how many is it, 9, 11 different cultures in South Africa that must be governed by definitely not 11 cultures. It will again boil down to 1 or 2. Which is exactly happening now. That's why we've got the problem. So what I'm saying is that a two-state solution, and we have a confederate system. It's very simple. What do we do with the Griquas? Where are we going to put them into a little area, a farm or two, or the Namas? No, it's very simple. Griqualand has been there for many, many years. What do we do with the Namas? Namakwaland has been there.
Yes, that's very true as well.
The Khoi and the Sun, Kalahari and Bushmanland has been there. So why do we want to always try and change according to what we as individuals think? Just follow logic. We have all been.
Hello guys, and a very warm welcome to the stream. I see you all has been here already waiting, more than 100 people waiting before the stream is. Hello.
Building up of the infrastructure of South Africa. The reality is now that same infrastructure is totally shot, because in the last 25 years they've done nothing to really keep the infrastructure up except the roads, because each and every, and I would love to see the contract that went out in this country, including the building of the RDP houses, every contract that went out, including contracts with municipalities, where there was not corruption involved. South Africa is bankrupt.
Yes,
totally bankrupt.
We're all aware of that.
Sorry?
I'm saying we all are aware of that, and Moody's are on the way to downgrade us on junk status. I just don't want to spend too much time on one point, so I want to try and keep the conversation going as fast as possible, so we can get into as much questions as possible. But before I get back to the questions, I just want to comment on you saying that if you have 11 different ethnic groups like in South Africa living together, there will always be one or two ethnic groups that rule over them and that totally dominate them, and this is actually backed up by science. I had a conversation on Twitter the other day about this, and I pulled up a scientific study from Canada that I read. It's called The Evolutionary Dominance of Ethnocentric Cooperation, in which they used computer simulations and models to simulate a situation in which two or more ethnic groups live together, and they found that the most ethnocentric group in that multicultural society will always dominate the others. So there's no such thing as a liberalism in such a country where you say everyone just lives together in a humanitarian country. It just takes one group to be more ethnocentric than the rest, and that group dominates everyone else. And that's exactly what happened in South Africa from its start in 1912. You can say from 1912 to 1948, the English people in South Africa completely dominated the country. Then in 1948, the Afrikaners took over from them because they put up a hard fight and they were more ethnocentric, and they completely dominated South Africa. And then after 1994, we have the synthetic group of just a black race, which was actually just synthetically created by communist propaganda that now completely rules over and dominates South Africa. And that is not going to ever change. The masters will just might change, but the system will never change unless the country gets broken up. And I think it's very important that everyone understands this. I just want to get to another super chat that we have here from Yaku, who says, what if you buy property outside the area that the ULA has laid out, or you already have property there? Will you then lose that property or eventually just sell it at a much lower market value? Is that the only option for you?
Yeah. Okay, I want to make it very clear. Remember, our legal basis for the area that we've got is, I've said it earlier, where the minority is the majority. But international law also says very clear, the borders that you indicate, now we've indicated those borders, the borders that you indicate does not have to be the final borders.
I see.
What does it mean? Very simple. Go and look at Israel. Israel is, I think, 8 times bigger than when it started off in 1948. So that boils back to the will of the people. The will of the people will determine, is that area in or out? But practically, let me answer Yaku on his question. Firstly, people must understand, changing Article 25 of the South African Constitution does not make it legal for the government to then, in any case, in terms of international law, I think it's international law Article 17, to then steal your property. It's still stealing. So, if those people, let's take an example. Let's say, for instance, Sanin. Again, I take Sanin because it's way up. Let's say you've got a property in Sanin, and we have successfully seceded the area that we've said away, plus some other areas gets incorporated into it, and Sanin falls out of it. No, he doesn't lose the property, but I can
But he
guarantee.
will eventually, because of expropriation without compensation, if that goes through.
No. What happened in Zimbabwe? You must understand one thing. I think it was 2 years ago, America and England started saying Zimbabwe must give the farms back. Remember, part of international political rules are that the international community will never get involved in internal politics of a country, except if it is blatant misuse of human rights.
So
Now,
they didn't see what happened in Zimbabwe as blatant misuse of human rights. Then why will they in South Africa?
No. Wait a second. You can't compare Zimbabwe with South Africa in terms of. Remember, there was a war. Then there was a peaceful negotiation to say we're going to have a vote, and then it went over to Mugabe. So again, in terms of international law, there was nothing done wrong. What was done wrong was when they started, basically, in terms of international accepted norms, when they started stealing property. Now, they will not interfere, because this is in terms, remember, we see it from a South African point of view. International community sees this is a legal voted government in Zimbabwe as well as South Africa. The majority of the people voted them in.
Exactly, yeah.
We're not there. We are not there at all. What we are saying is we want to secede. We are following a specific set of legal rules for secession. We're talking about two totally different things here. Remember, and I wanted to come back to that, in terms of another country helping us. December 2018, Donald Trump signed a law into effect, Law S1158, the Elie Wiesel Prevention of Genocide Act. Go and read it. Please, people, go and read it. It was written with a specific idea that Rwanda will never happen again. Rwanda is still a big problem for the world to accept that the United Nations actually took their guns and whatever they had, and they ran away and they left the people. But why would the international media, who's controlled by the same people, go on about it? So they just leave it. But Trump is a different kettle of fish. And he said, this will never happen again. There is a potential genocide going to happen in South Africa. Why? Because Dr. Stanton, many years ago already, I think it was 2012, already said that out of the 8 stages of genocide, we are already at stage 6. Now, something must be done to stop this. And the only thing that they can do, they can't just run in here and say, right, now we're going to sort this out for you. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly, yes.
They want the people of the country. They want to know what is the will of the people. The sad thing, Willem, is that where we stand today, with 223,000 votes, it effectively is telling the world, we don't want self-determination. That's the reality.
Exactly, that is true yet, or at this moment, but it is something that I think will change as things get really a lot worse in South Africa, because I think at this stage people are still way too comfortable to even, or many people are still way too comfortable to even think or consider about this, but it is starting to change now. I think we are at a point where people's minds are changing. Alright, we just have 15 minutes left if we want to keep this an hour, so I'll try to get questions out of the chat and we'll try to answer them as briefly as possible. So if you want to ask something, now is the time. But before we start with that, Hein, just tell us again where we can reach you, what the websites are,
Okay.
and why what each one is for, and then I'll put them in the description as well.
Our main website, where there's a massive amount of information, is www.ulacongress, with two S's.com. And the other one is www.voteforselfdetermination.co.za. But that one will take you back to ULA Congress in any case.
Oh, is it? And I'm just on the website right now. I see on the home page there's already a place where you can register to put your name behind the mandate for self-determination. So I'm just going to put that one link in the description then, so then people can find that. Let's see if we've got any questions in the chat so far. I'm just going to read this. Yeah, there's one question, Hein. Do you think are the chances of a civil war happening before any of these things that you are planning goes through? And if so, when do you think will something like this happen?
Willem, we've done not one, we've done many surveys. And at this stage, it looks, and remember this is not official, but it looks as if the chances of a civil war in South Africa, and then we're forgetting of what the EFF and the BLF and the presidents of South Africa dance and say kill the Boer. We're not talking about that, we're talking about surveys. If we only look at surveys, we are standing at 68% for a civil war. Now, if you look in terms of international accepted norms, if your chances of a civil war is above 20%, then you've got to start preparing. I think I've said enough about that.
Yeah, I think that clearly says your opinion on this. Just tell me, there's also another question here. What if you don't live in the area, but you still want to put your name behind the mandate for self-determination? How would that work?
You can still put your name there because it's for that group of people that I've said. When it gets to the referendum and you're not in the area, well, obviously then you can't vote. But it's the same as Israel. There are more Jews living outside of Israel than in Israel.
Talking about Israel, I see there's quite a lot of people asking whether you are Jewish. I suppose you can't help having the same surname as probably the most famous Jew who ever lived. So are you Jewish yourself, Hein?
Okay, let's answer that. Firstly, you are referring to Karl Marx.
Yes.
Firstly, Marx, M-A-R-X, is not Jewish. Karl Marx, his name wasn't Karl Marx.
Okay.
His name was Mordechai Levi.
Oh, okay.
His father, with the problems in Germany in the beginning of the 1800s, 1820s, changed their name to a German surname of Marx. He was born, Karl Marx was born as Mordechai Levi. No, I'm not German. Jewish. Not even close.
Okay, I see.
There are Marx people that are Jewish, but they are spelled M-A-R-K-S, which happens to also come from Germany. But the German Jews were called M-A-R-K-S, not M-A-R-X.
I see there's a very interesting question here from Ernst Kleinhans, whom I actually know in real life. He is a politician himself for the Freedom Front, and he says, how do you prove your constituency? Because there is no way for you to do this. And actually, I just want to comment on that. This brings two problems here. One can say that a lot of people who are minorities are able to vote in it then if they don't live there. But also then people who do not live there can vote. And I think I can add another question to this, and that is the one that in the area that you have drawn on your map sits the Western Cape, specifically Cape Town. And Cape Town is seeing the largest influx of Xhosa people that any city I've ever seen in South Africa from any other tribe of people. So how would you deal with those two problems?
Okay, the first question, from your politician friend is that firstly, he must take these glasses off and doesn't see this as politics. We're not a political party, so we don't have constituencies.
But I mean, he's saying about the area, you have to live in the area in order to vote in the referendum, right?
That's only a referendum. That's why I said earlier, I made it very clear. They can vote as to give the mandate for the so-called group of people. But they may not, if they don't live in the area, vote in the referendum. That's very clear. In terms of your question of the Western Cape, and specifically Cape Town, where the blacks have been bus trained, flown, swam, run, walk, crawled in, we took the 2011, like I said, figures. They can bring in as many as they want after 2011. Remember, this process, it's a legal process. All the documentation we've got, the sheriff of the court handled everything. And who does the sheriff of the court work for? The government. They can bring in 50 million to Cape Town if they want to. Doesn't make any difference because they've got to take those 50 million back again. That's not illegal repatriation of people. That's legal repatriation of people that was brought in for political purposes. Now, interestingly enough, and it's a total thumbsuck figure. All the blacks that are in all the towns in South Africa where they've never been before 1994, I would say that at least 85% of them have been sent there for political reasons, if not more than 85%. And what is the political reason? To vote those towns
ANC. And the province as well, of course. There are two questions that I'm going to ask into one question. The first one's very simple. What do you think of the Zuidland group? We all know about them. They are the people who worked with the so-called king of the Khoisan, Cornelius. And then the other question, which is a bit more complex, is AfriForum is also working towards self-determination, but their strategy, as set out in Flip Buys's book, is the Ankerdorp strategy, on which they are working, and they also have 240,000 members. So could you comment on both these two groups and what your opinions are on them?
Willem, it goes much further than those two groups. There are more groups.
I'm aware of that, yes, but those are the questions, yeah.
There's much more. We've made it very clear, and in fact, I've signed, I think, 2 statements last year to make it very clear. Remember, we are not an organization in terms of politics. People see it wrong. We're actually nothing else than a legal process group. I made it very clear. We are willing to work with any person or any group that legally works towards self-determination. So that's your question, not only for Zuidland, for anyone.
I see, yes.
That's for anyone. The next question, in terms of Solidariteit's 30 towns, it's actually a much more complicated question and answer than just what you've asked, because it's a very noble idea to say, well, let's identify 30 towns or cities, get the whites to populate them, we control them, but he never said what happens afterwards. So,
but who controls them?
Sorry?
Who controls them?
No, he's basically saying the whites must then control.
Oh, I see.
So what I'm saying is that Flip Buys is actually saying nothing else than he wants internal self-determination. Now, internal self-determination is nothing different than Orania, for instance. Orania, which is a beautiful town, I love it there, I've been there many times. Interestingly enough, they've got a virtually no crime rate there, very, very, very little. But the reality is they don't have freedom. What freedom do they have? They may not even generate their own power because they still fall under the ANC government. If, let's take an example, and don't say it can't happen. That's unfortunately part of human human nature. Let's say there's a murder. Who's going to investigate it? Well, the South African police, the ANC.
Of course, yes. And that's not something that would be ideal, as we know the police is exceptionally corrupt and also exceptionally bad at doing their jobs.
So what I'm saying is that it's very noble to say, send our people to 30 cities. My question is, what then? Where is our self-determination? Where's our long-term future? I'm not only thinking of myself, I've got a couple of years left.
Of course.
What happens to my children, their children, their children? We've got to find a long-term, as long as possible, a long-term solution. And I've looked at this, and I'm not the only one that looked at it.
Yes, I know.
There is no other solution than sovereignty, where each and every group of people can govern themselves. We can't do it. Just practically think. Let's say, for instance, let's take take George, which is a city. I think George is on Flip Base's list as well. Okay? So now we take George and we attract thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of whites to George. What is the logical thing that will happen next?
Well,
the blacks will come as well.
Of course, we've seen that process happening all over again in South Africa.
Exactly. So it's a total futile exercise.
Yes, I hear what you're saying. I just want to comment, and I want to say that while I did read Flip Base's book, The Road to Self-Determination or Self-Management, I'm not sure if you read it yet, but he actually, one wouldn't say explicitly says the exact same things that you say about sovereignty, but he hints to it a lot. And I think everyone who knows politics in South Africa will know that both AfriForum and the Freedom Front Plus, who come out of the same group of people, play a very moderate and politically correct game. Now, I think it's something that opinions won't really change on this, whether you think that a more hardline stance or a more moderate stance will work, but I'll just end that off here with Jaco. He gave a super chat. He didn't ask a question, but he just made a statement. But as I said, I will read all the super chats. He says self-determination will only happen once a people value their life more than their assets, which I agree with completely. But he also says there that he believes that AfriForum is the best way forward for the Afrikaner. So let's just get back to questions again.
I want to actually react to that.
Okay, you can, yes.
Very simple. If he says AfriForum or C or D or whatever, then the question is, what is their plan?
Yes.
How do they want to get it? What are they doing? Because to secede, to have sovereignty, you've got to follow international law. There's no other way to do it.
Yes.
And the reality is that the ULA is the only organization that not only have started it nearly 8 years ago, but that's at the point where we are. If any other organization wants to start it, they are 8 years behind.
Exactly.
So then the question is very simple. Why don't we just all work together? Or is it about positions or money or whatever? Because the reality is there's no money involved in the ULA because we don't take money. If people want to donate money, we take it. We don't even keep it. It stays in the ULA's attorney's trust account. Why?
I see.
Because I don't want people to turn around and say, "Oh, Hein, I see you've got a new bakkie, or you're building onto your place. Very nice, huh? Seeing that I don't want that, and I don't need anybody else's money. I work for my money. I've worked for myself for 39 years. The question. And I'm not talking specifically about AfriForum here. I'm also talking about them. It's very simple. What is the plan? How do they want to get our sovereignty? Or don't they want our sovereignty? And that's the million-dollar question. Do they want our sovereignty? And if they want it, what have they done about it? And I'm talking about here, not, as I say again, not only AfriForum, I'm talking about all the organizations. And I've said it in this program so far, I think 3 or 4 times. I will say it again. Guys, take hands. Let's stand together and get the solution quicker than we want. Why? We don't have time.
Exactly, I
think
agree with you fully there.
It's very clear. There is a civil war coming. In one way or the other, it's coming. Or are we prepared to live the way we're living at the moment, where our people are getting poorer and poorer because they're basically being BEE'd out of jobs? Now they want to steal the pensions of the poor people that have worked. How much time have we got left? That's the question. And I can guarantee you, we don't have a lot of time left. Then you put into this pot international events which can change things overnight. But no, it's much easier to rather fight with each other, to rather attack people or individuals like myself. I'm being attacked every week. Why? I'll tell you why I'm being attacked. Because we're doing the right thing. Because we are not chasing money. Because we're not promising things that can't happen. We make it very clear, and I've said it earlier in this program. If we do not get the votes, we will not get independence. It's as simple as that.
I think we covered basically everything that we could cover in an hour, and I think it was a very, very fruitful conversation. So I'm going to end this off here, but I'm just going to give my personal comments on this whole situation as well, and what I believe, and the conclusion that I have come to from studying organizations like yourselves and studying the situation in South Africa for quite a few years now already. And my personal stance is just that we want to support, or I myself want to support, any organization who works towards something better for everyone or every people in South Africa, and specifically people who work towards self-determination, because I believe that is the only solution for South Africa. And whether they take a hardline approach to this or a legal approach to this like yourself, or whether they take a moderate approach to this, they all have my support. I support Solidarity and the things that they are doing. I think they are doing an absolute wonderful job with the universities that they are building, and also the Ankerdorpe idea and the boots on the ground idea, the idea of a new commando corps or a Beurtwacht system. I think it's also something that is brilliant, and I think any organization who works towards this will get my support as well. But in any case, Hein, thank you very much for coming up on this. I'll end the stream off here, and goodbye to you.
Thank you, Willem, and thanks for the opportunity to get the message out to our people to go and vote. Simple as that. It doesn't cost anything, nothing. It can't bring anything negative, but it can definitely bring something positive. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Hein. And to everyone who watched this, I also thank all of you. And if you've joined this conversation a bit later, we've discussed a lot of things in detail, not just about the ULA and their strategy, but also about self-determination and South Africa in general. It was a very, very interesting and fruitful conversation, so I would recommend you watching this video